Many psychologists and mental health providers these days are seeing clients virtually. And have you ever questioned how to go about transforming this digital placelessness of telehealth practice into a sacred space? For example, how might healing occur not just with what is said between two people on a screen, but about the very ground beneath your feet, the echoes of your ancestors, and the stories carried in the wind? In an era where our connections can feel fleeting in a digital space, how can we rediscover the profound power of place when interacting in an environment that almost feels placeless? Welcome to People of Color in Psychology, the show that explores mental health topics specific to culture, diversity, and communities of color. I am your host, Jack Zen. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our guest today, Dr. Ezra Lockhart, an associate professor of marriage and family therapy at National University, a clinical supervisor, founder and clinical director at Easy Does It Counseling, and he's also an author with over 50 published works. Dr. Lockhart specializes in strategic family therapy, teletherapy, and transgender affirming care. Additionally, he has mentored graduate students and professionals through roles at institutions like the Colorado School for Family Therapy and Yorkville University, emphasizing inclusive and competency-focused supervision. A dedicated advocate for mental health, Dr. Lockhart has chaired ethics committees and conferences promoting ethical standards and collaboration. His international talks in Canada, India, Japan, and Slovenia address critical issues like technology addiction and suicide. He has received over 50 awards and 8 research grants. As the author of the Emotionally Empowered series, Dr. Lockhart provides practical insight into emotional well-being and communication, and his high-impact work continues to shape the future of psychology, supervision, and advocacy. As a native Hawaiian, Dr. Lockhart will be sharing ways to consider indigenous land-based frameworks and practices within the context of telehealth, which we often think of as being placeless. Dr. Lockhart, thank you so much for being on our podcast today, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Many of us are doing telehealth treatment. In fact, I'm a psych pack provider myself. So I think, when we're thinking about telehealth practice, the part that is missing, and I think you're trying to bring into the conversation, is how do we incorporate indigenous land-based frameworks and practices within this amorphous, nebulous telehealth environment? Can you, before we get into that as the focus of our conversation today, share with me and our listeners a little bit about what you're doing right now?
So since the global pandemic, and a lot of us, as you said, moved to online, our practice is completely telehealth. We rarely see anybody in person, and we miss, I'm going to be honest with you, we miss being able to physically go to a place, be at a place, and really transition into the healing work.
Yeah, I know I miss the in-person appointments. Unfortunately, the pandemic at its height is over. So I do offer hybrid appointments. That being said, there's still a lot of colleagues who are either fully telehealth or myself doing hybrid work. And so tell me a little bit more about this indigenous land-based framework and how we even consider doing that within the telehealth space.
Great question. So I am Kanaka which is Aboriginal Hawaiian, and we acknowledge the land as a sacred place, and we call it ʻāina. And the land isn't just a place that you put your feet on. It is a place that you are deeply connected to relationally. So land is alive, land is sacred, land has your ancestor and your story. So bringing that in, even through a screen, I think adds this additional layer in which land becomes a co-therapist.
Say more about that.
Sure. So within my practice, I don't do therapy to a client, I engage them in this co-collaboration in which we examine what their relationship is with place. So, and that is regardless if you live in a city, a suburb, or some rural area. You like we are all physically in a place, and we can forget that as we're just these talking heads, right? Or just hearing someone's voice. And I've found that it's grounding. It's grounding. It situates a person. And when the therapy session is over, the land remains. The person remains in the land. So the healing is continuous at that point. So with my clients, I like to again situate land as a remembering, and that there's things that you can do within session and that continuity outside of session that really creates creates the space, honors the space, and connects you to it. And it can be small acts like lighting candles, holding a stone from the place, playing ocean sounds, or even going out and recording the birds that are in your area and then bringing that physically into session. So as you're aware, in our industry, there is what's called the other 23 hours, right? Outside of
Yeah,
the session where a
yes.
lot of work happens. And what I invite is for clients to be prepared to come to session and to make the best use of that time. So again, with the contiguous episodic contact, we can prepare for the next and really build some kind of ritual around physically coming into the space and inviting healing.
Yeah, it does get lost as we're talking about this. I'm thinking if we're doing virtual therapy, it's like if I meet someone in person, I think about oftentimes the drive to a location and then to office space or the scenery, it could be trees, plants. There is that physical environment. You hear the birds, right? But then it's like, wait, I just log on, log off, I share my screen, handouts, things like that. It's so digitally focus and you lose a sense of wait, how do I generalize this digital stuff into this external land-based environmental practice?
Yeah, that's what I learned during the shift to teletherapy is that we become more disembodied and more displaced. And I really wanted to like fill that gap in, like reconnect people. And there is, as of recently, these mindfulness practices and grounding practices to get people more embodied and more in the present and the now. And a lot of the issues that I find with my clients in particular is existential. It is these abstract concepts, these abstract fears and anxieties that they can't put their finger on. They can't touch it. They can't run away from it or hide from it or put it away or defeat it. So bringing them back into their body and keeping them like locally centered in a place can help to again connect you to what's real and concrete instead of what's abstract and nebulous and atmospheric.
Hmm. Okay, so there, as you're talking about like the connection with the land, the candle, the physical experience, sensational type of experience, you bring that into
Mhm.
therapy. Now, I have a concern, again, just a conversation. I have a concern that how do we, I don't want to suddenly get into like a performative, culturally appropriating type of practice, because it's like we see therapists where they put land acknowledgement on their website or put land acknowledgement. I think that from a respectful manner is great. I'm curious, in addition to that, what else can we do in a very genuine way that is consistent with the Indigenous land-based framework?
Invocations have their place, especially if those who are invoking it find significance in it or part of it. And I agree that a lot of the land-based acknowledgments can feel empty. And in my culture, we have what's called mo'oelo, and it's storytelling. And if the land is alive and we're connected to the land, the story of our lineage, of our right, like of our hopes and dreams and wants and the trials that we've gone through is present there within the story. So really what I like to do is have clients connect to that story. And it's almost like a genealogical excavation in which they go into the past and really honor that relationality, right? Like we are here as products of those who have come before us. And it's not this Western ideal of the great giants that we stand on shoulders of. These are people who we embody. We have come from people and that's those intimate connections, people who have been in our lives, and the remnants of those who have passed are in us. You can talk about it genetically, you can talk about it epigenetically, right? And the place is in our body epigenetically. So having clients consider what that history is, what their personal and collective history is, brings a connectedness that my clients have found to defeat loneliness, especially in this day and age where people feel so disconnected from one another.
Wow. I I had a vision as you're talking about this. The way you're describing this created this vivid imagery for me, which is that we ourselves, this physical being body, is actually connected to a land of our ancestor or place. And so as we migrate, immigrate, or move to a new residence, we have actually carried pieces of that land and experience with us. Now we're at this new location. Is that how, at least that's the image? Is that what?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Migration is a very strong part of it. So I am a student of Bateson and Jay Haley. So Gregory Bateson and Jay Haley. Gregory Bateson is the first in the West to apply cybernetics to living human systems instead of it just being control theory. And what Bateson uncovered, which I've actually written about, how Bateson work can or has some gaps and can be, or that can be connected with Kanakauwiwi epistemologies, right? Like our ways of knowing in order to make it or make that information not so abstract and make it more practical. So in relationship to migration, we've all come from other places, especially when you start tracing it back. And if we talk about intergenerational transmission, it's one of Bowen's theories that comes from Bateson, which is that we carry the wounds and the traumas of our forefathers and mothers. And those traumas are from places. For instance, my grandfather was there during the bombing of Pearl Harbor and bagged bodies of friends and families and strangers. And that's in my body. My father served in Vietnam and saw combat as an Air Forceman. And that is carried through him into me and the way that he related to me and the stories he did not tell. And acknowledging that is powerful. We talk about what it means to identify and recognize a thing, and that one of the first steps towards healing is seeing what it is, right? Trying to uncover what it is. And genealogy is one of these ways. So when we talk about genealogy and these land-based practices, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about history.
Hmm. Give us a picture, a glimpse of, you gave the idea of bringing experience into the telehealth practice. bring something and share it in session. Just again, I'm just throwing something out
Please.
there as in terms of the idea.
Yes.
Are there other strategies that you would recommend as we are experimenting with this? Experimenting may not be a right word, but as we are practicing what it's like to bring that land-based framework into our telehealth practice.
Yes. So the way I understand it is more an invitation for discovery and self-discovery and connecting families, because stories hold emotional truths and cultural memories, and you don't just arrive at them. You don't just sit down and contemplate and reflect, and all of a sudden it's there. You have to go to the other storytellers, the ones in our lives that have lived those experiences or who've known of others who lived that experience. So it's relational. So when I work with clients and I say, or I share a story to try to model what it is, and I invite them, go explore, go talk to your grandfather, talk to your grandmother, talk to your in-laws, find out what the experiences are. And this is connecting to shared humanity,
Mhm.
right? We are not alone. Like, we come from a place and we are of others.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also fascinating to hear this because you're sharing your story. You're modeling that. And from a Western approach, it's sort of, I wouldn't say taboo. Folks tend to be more reluctant, a little bit nervous. How much do I share about my story? And honestly, for you to have shared also that experience today with our listeners about your grandfather and also your father, I also felt a sense of emotion. Like you said, even the stories your father did not share that he withheld for whatever reason. I wonder if there's a part where when even my father, if he doesn't share a story about his experience, that I'm missing a part of him.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Well, it's not just what we say, it's what we don't say. And in those silent moments is often action. And we will be affected by the withholding, right? And it might come out in ways in which we were disciplined, right? In ways in which we were not supported. And I think that's an important thing to just kind of take forward in your own life and how you might affect those around you, like your children or your coworkers, right? That inaction in itself is powerful. And the way that I think about it in terms of self-disclosure, right? There's how many laws and ethical codes that just kind of say don't do it, right? They leave room for nuance, but they say it's best practice just to be therapist as operator, right? Therapist of an operator of a model or an approach, an evidence-based therapy versus therapist as self, what it means to bring yourself into the session. And what I find is, first off, I always like to get permission so that the client understands what I might do and have almost that agreement to permit me as I will permit them to share their story. And there's a bit of containment in which this isn't about, like, the session isn't about me, but it's about possibility and potential. Because when people don't know other options or other ways, again, you're not going to stumble upon it, right? You're going to have to be shown.
Yes.
So, yes, so I will model it, I will invite my own story in it. And often in session, there is this cultural exchange that occurs. And you will see in my practice, as well as my supervision of those who practice, multiculturalism, cross-culturalism is a central element because we are all from different places and collected histories. And I had an amazing experience as my mother was the first of her generation, our generation, which got off the island, got off of Oahu. She married an Air Forceman, and we went to Alaska, of all places, from sea to snow. And I had the privilege of traveling to over 120 villages in rural Alaska. It's a large place, Alaska is. People don't realize how big it is. And it's so diverse geographically, but it's also so diverse culturally. And I would fly in, walk off or onto the tarmac, and I was invited with or by people who asked me, "Who are you? Who are your family? Where did you come from?" And they would invite story. And I learned more about my culture in this exchange, where I had
Wow.
to talk about myself, talk about where I came from, our customs, and how that influences my current deeds. And in that, those deeds were my name. And I would share it with people. And the people of Alaska, the many peoples of Alaska, were very welcoming and inviting to me. And I take that forward.
Wow. Wow. Well, Dr. Lockhart, thank you so much for sharing that experience. I mean, it just this is so fascinating, such an enriching conversation about the framework, how you go about thinking, bridging, and carrying that land-based, personal, relational use of self practice to telehealth environment. So, I mean, you've written books, you're teaching, you're doing all this work, you're doing research as well, traveling to different
Mm.
locations, navigating different time zones, as we've talked about prior to this recording. So, can you share with us any memorable events and circumstances that influenced how you got into this work?
Oh, so it is well documented on the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, AAMFT. They did a member spotlight on their website, and I share the story of how my mother was in a car accident, became blinded, and I was actually in IT work. I was up on the slope working for the local government, working with networking systems. Came down to support her, and she got wheeled out to the curb from the hospital without them asking where I came from or where I was going. And I ended up not fulfilling my 5-year contract. I got, I think, what, 4 months left on the 5-year contract, and supported her for almost a year and a half on savings as a newly blind person who really fell through the cracks, got no support whatsoever. And it took me about a year and a half to start navigating the Health and Human Services insane system
Oh my
that is
gosh.
here.
Oh gosh. I'm sorry.
And that's how I got into this field. Oh, no, 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 no. It's like, this is life. This is life. Life is often meandering, right? We have best intentions to be someplace, to go someplace, and life will take us there.
Wow. It's a lot of struggle. I mean, I'm thinking about your mom having to make that adjustment. And actually, we were talking about, or in a previous episode, we were talking about, accessibility and working with individuals with disability, how that can also be challenging. But in telehealth world, there's sometimes the benefit of using technology to address access to care. But sorry, I digress. I just,
No, please.
yeah, yeah. So that with that experience, it led to you having a really deep understanding of health and human services and provision of social services in general, which then led you to do a lot of this work, therapy, family therapy, and then bridging the technology piece. So as a person of color, because you talked about how some folks weren't even interested in asking about your experience, I'm thinking about, as a person of color, what were some challenges you faced and overcame that you would be willing to share?
Certainly. The thing that I often think about is how my culture is often commodified. People in the West, especially in America, think about Hawaiians as hula, or what is it, grass skirts and hula dancing and surfboards. And yes, those are a part, of our heritage and our practice, but it's so surface, it's so reductive. And for a long time, I would be angry, would be very angry and offended when it was evident that my culture was not understood and that I felt forced to advocate or to teach about myself in this almost uninvited way. I became very angry. And then I took on the charge. I was like, no, if these are people in my life, regardless if they are long-standing in my life, like I can speak to it. I can take that moment to pause whatever it is that we're doing and address it in a way that is that cultural exchange that I talked about, right? I I think for me in particular, it was about it was about doing tasks, like being a consumer, being a provider, and just being almost that reductive action that we're demanded of. And it allowed me to take a break from that and acknowledge that I'm a person and that the person that I'm talking to is a person and have that cultural exchange. And then that I got less angry.
Wow. Huh. Yeah, because it's like the system forces us to have these reductive interactions as opposed to, wait, I'm a person. This other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And you see it in service work. You see it in service work across all industries, right? Like the waitress, like the checkout person at the grocery center, right? Like the person who delivers your mail. We say things like mailman and cashier. We don't say Bob, Bill, Jamie. We don't say anything like that. And those viral moments that we see online is when the humanity is present, right? So I invite that. I invite that now.
wow. Wow. And for you, what does it mean to be a native Hawaiian therapist?
So it's a powerful question. It's a powerful question. Lately, I have been on my own journey of self-discovery culturally. And what I've learned is that it's not divisible. It isn't that I'm a native Hawaiian therapist. I am a therapist, period. And I can't be divorced of it. When I am divorced of it, I am inauthentic. I am not bringing myself forward. So for me, it's a thing that if I don't acknowledge, it will be elicited from me and it won't be on my own terms. And I might be caught off guard in the same way that I did a long time ago, in which I was angry about it. So I welcome that it's a part of me and it's present in the room when we have session. It allows me again to be liberated, to be free, and to invite that as I model it.
Hmm. You really wear it. You really make it a part of who you are rather than like you're saying, I am separating out this therapist part and Native Hawaiian part, that I am all of this, rather than someone just out of the blue saying, "Oh, where are you from?" And of course,
Yes.
there's a whole thing about that question, but from actual interesting, someone who's genuinely interested, to be able to lean into that response.
Yes. And it is, for me, part of the land-based practice, especially when it comes to being Kanaka, which is the people, and for honoring ʻāina, the land. We in the West have been taught about territories and what it means to draw lines that separate people. And when you divide or attempt to divide your culture from who you are, it creates this wall and this gap between you and the client. So, in that, a land based practice is to be whole, be liberated, and have that cultural exchange where it's really culture forward. And for those in the West who might feel like they don't embody their culture, Then I invite the exploration, go on a journey, go discover, go into the land and find out where you've been and where you come from.
Yeah. Yeah, this is such a powerful message continuously for all of us to learn the history, the land connection, the relationships that we have formed or have came from. Because oftentimes we're just so busy, we don't even look to ask about people's experiences. So, Dr. Lockhart, given your contributions and this fascinating conversation, how can we support you?
Mm. Support my research, support my authorship. You can literally find me on Amazon.com. You can type in Ezra Lockhart. A whole lot of things will pop up. I have a series called Emotionally Yours. It's a 9-book series that it will take you on a journey. It certainly will. And it has a lot of the visualizations that is place centered. And you can go there in your mind and you can try to embody it. It also has some logotherapy, so it asks some existential questions so that the place is meaningful. It's not just to go on a hike or to go run the block. It is about the land being living and it being meaningful in your life. And that's the connection. So I invite folks to get on Amazon. You can also go onto my website, easydoesitcounseling.com. And in there's a books button. Click the books button.
Great. We'll definitely include all that in our show notes. So, Dr. Lockhart, any final thoughts?
I think I want to acknowledge relationship as a way to defeat loneliness. We all know that isolation and solitude is hard. And it's not just hard. In the West, we use it as punishment, right? We take people and we sequester them. We take them away from society. And that loneliness is hurtful. And I invite us all to be healed as we connect to those around us. We connect to family, we connect to our land, and ultimately connect with ourselves.
Well, Dr. Lockhart, thank you so much for your time today. A huge thank you to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please share and subscribe to People of Color in Psychology. You can also support us by registering for continuing education courses or making a one-time donation on the Multicultural Counseling Institute's website. Your feedback is important to us, so feel free to send an email, a message on LinkedIn, or leave a voice message on our website. Until next time, this is your host, Jack Sun.